Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're taking a look at the Patek Philippe 5712 in white gold. So we're going to go back in time now and take a look at the 5712, but actually we're going to look slightly at the Nautilus. If you want to learn much more in depth about the Nautilus's history, then go check out my 5711 review that I did a few weeks ago. That looks very much more in detail at how Patek Philippe introduced the Nautilus into the collection and why. In this video, we're going to look very basically at the Nautilus. So yeah, if you want to look more in depth, then go check out that review. So we're going to go back in time now to the late 60s, specifically 1969, which is when Seiko released the quartz movement, which is a brand new electronic movement. It really disrupted the Swiss watch industry because it offered a much more reliable, much more accurate, and a much more cheaper movement versus any other mechanical movement out there. And it was also in the time where people were looking at space travel and futuristic technologies, and so it gained huge popularity, and as a result the Swiss watch industry really suffered. Brands like Patek Philippe. So Patek Philippe contacted the watch designer Gerald Genta in the early 70s to come and help them design a watch that would really remind people as to why they should be still buying Swiss watches. And Gerald Genta designed the Nautilus in 1976, or just before that, but Patek released it in 1976. It was a steel sports watch finished to an exceptional level, maybe even more finer detail in terms of finishing than a dress watch. Not only that, but it was also in steel, which was incredibly difficult to finish a watch to that level and machine a watch to that level in steel. It had never been done before, and as a result of that, the price of this watch was extremely extortionate. It was so expensive, even more so than the Royal Oak, which already set records for the most expensive steel sports watch at that time. It wasn't mega popular, and it hasn't been mega popular over the years until kind of the last few years, I'd say, that it's become insanely popular. It has been, a watch that Patek have had no trouble selling, but it hasn't really had its insane waiting list that it has now. Really, for the last 5 years, I'd say it really gained that much popularity. Maybe a little bit before, but the one we're looking at and one we're interested in was actually released in 2006, and 2006 marked the 30th anniversary for the Nautilus. And Patek Philippe, to celebrate the 30th anniversary, revamped the whole Nautilus line. But the model we're specifically looking at, the 5712, was released in 2006, but there was a version of it actually released in 2005. So we're going to skip back 1 year before to 2005 and look at the 3712. The 3712 was the most complicated Nautilus ever created to date. Previous to that, Patek really had only ever put simple time and date only watches into that Nautilus collection. The 3712 featured a moon phase, a calendar, so date, a small seconds, and also a power reserve, and they fit it all into the exceptional thin case that the Nautilus was famed for. The 3712 was available in steel, had this kind of grey-blue dial. It was obviously only in production from 2005 to 2006, so it has an incredibly small production run, which is why it's a very collectible watch now. It's actually one of my favourite Nautiluses that Patek has ever made. I think it's a beautiful watch, partly because it's smaller than the 5712, and I really like that size that they made that watch back then. The 3712 actually only really had a production number of around 350 pieces. It's between 300 and 500 pieces, but we reckon it's around 350 pieces that were actually produced. There are only a few minor changes that they made to the 3712, to bring it up to the 5712. Things like the bracelet, the clasp, the case size, the dial. Very minor updates, but it does look like a slightly different piece. If you put them side by side, you can definitely tell. So the first 5712 that was released was in steel in 2006. Later on, they introduced the rose gold and the white gold variations, both of which were available on leather straps. And we're looking today at the white gold variation. If you want to check out my review of the 5712 rose gold, then do go check that out. I did that a few weeks ago, but today we're looking at the white gold edition. So let's take a look now at the features of this watch. We're going to start, as always, with the clasp. The clasp on this watch is the standard Nautilus clasp. It's quite a sporty looking clasp. It's not my favorite clasp, if I'm being honest. I don't like the huge Nautilus writing that this has on it. I think it looks kind of a little bit weird and very un-Patek Philippe. I think they're a bit more refined in this, and it does really surprise me that they still put this on their watches. It seems a bit dated and not quite right. But anyway, it's in an all polished finish. It's got a twin trigger deploying clasp. The great thing about this clasp though is it has like a screw that screws into the leather bracelet, which is brilliant. Often when you have a leather bracelet, as you wear it more and more and more, and especially if it's quite tight, probably too tight, the leather can stretch on that of where the hole is, and it means that the pin can sometimes ping out of the hole in the leather, whereas Patek Philippe has fixed that, and they've made it so that you can screw in the clasp into the leather, so there's no way of that clasp popping out of the leather, which is a really, really cool feature. The clasp, like I said, is an all mirror polish finish. It's finished really, really beautifully. It's very comfortable, it's quite low profile. I personally prefer the simple tang buckle they do for the complicated watches or the Calatrava watches. Lots of our clients actually prefer most of all Patek's clasps the Calatrava cross clasp, because that's kind of iconic Patek Philippe. It is very, very beautiful looking, but I find that protrudes a little bit more so than the tang buckle. For me, I just think the tang buckle is super simple, super elegant, and it's my favorite clasp. But yeah, great clasp, but not my favorite, but still a very good little piece, addition to this watch. Moving now onto our leather strap, we've got a beautiful gloss finish alligator strap on this watch. It kind of has almost a blue tone to it if you get it in certain light. It's very, very beautiful. Obviously being Patek Philippe, it's the finest quality leather, especially if you get a used example like we're looking at today. The strap definitely softens up over the years and becomes incredibly comfortable. Next, moving on to our case, we're going to turn the case over and take a look at the movement on this watch. So we've got a beautiful clear crystal case back, which is amazing. I love clear crystal case backs. They're the best. We should be able to appreciate the mechanical movements that these watches have inside them, and it really goes back to the essence of the 5712, of why it was trying to separate itself out from the quartz movement. So this movement is a really, really beautiful movement. My favorite thing about this movement is obviously the micro rotor. I think it's a really, really cool little feature. It's really noisy as well, which I love. It's obviously finished to a beautiful, beautiful standard, like all Patek Philippe's are. It features the Patek Philippe seal. Every screw is polished. Every screw hole is chamfered, edged and polished as well. The detail is absolutely exceptional on this watch in terms of movement. As an owner of this watch, you'll never ever see the detail that they've gone to, because it's all beneath the layers of the movement, but Patek still finishes it to that level. Moving now onto our case, we've got an 18 karat white gold case on this watch. Beautiful, beautiful finish, kind of all brushed finish, and on white gold that really comes to life more so than steel. Steel looks great in brush finish, but the softness of the white gold means that the grain is almost a little bit more defined. You can also get that on platinum as well. The grain has a different feeling. Definitely on white gold watches it feels much more matte than it does on steel, which is really, really cool. So yeah, the only thing to watch out for is on white gold, because it is much softer. It can wear out much quicker than it can on steel, and therefore that brushed finish starts to become a little bit more of a smooth finish, which is not quite as attractive as those defined sort of grains on the 5712 or any brush finish for that matter. Just moving around our case now, we've got little minor accents of polish finish on this case, which is really, really beautiful. Obviously we've got our ears, which is iconic Nautilus, and sits so beautifully on the wrist. Those ears really help to balance and create some real symmetry on the wrist, which I absolutely love. The bezel is kind of one of our only polished areas of this watch, the outer rim of the bezel. The top of the bezel is obviously in a brushed finish, which looks really cool. Our sides of the case feature some minor polish finishes. We've obviously got our pushers as well for adjusting the moon phase, the calendar, etc, etc. They're just done with a simple dimple pusher that you get included with the watch when you buy it from Patek. The other polished finish that we have on this watch is our bubble links that connect the leather strap to the case, and those kind of replicate the same look, kind of the cushion shape that the actual watch itself has, which is really, really nice. And that adds like a little glimmer and detail and shimmer to the watch, because it is mostly a brushed finish watch. The case is obviously very slim on this piece as well. Moving out onto our dial, we've got a beautiful grey dial. It's kind of like a gradient grey dial, the way it moves into the center. So it starts quite dark on the edges and moves kind of lighter in the center, which looks really beautiful. You have to get it in certain light really for it to pop out, which I'll come on to in a moment. We've got this kind of ridged effect, like ripple ridged effect on the dial, which looks really great. Again, adds some definition and contrast and detail to the dial if you get it in some good light. On the dial, the information we see displayed is a power reserve at the top left. We've got our hours and minutes hand in the center. At the bottom right, we've got our small seconds, and then the bottom left, we've got our moon phase with our calendar around the edge. That kind of concludes the features of the 5712G. Let's discuss whether or not I'd own this watch and what I think about this piece. It is a great looking watch. I absolutely love the 5712. My only thing that I don't love about this one out of the other two available, the steel and the rose gold, is that this white gold variant tends to blend into one. I've really tried to make sure it pops out and looks the best it can on camera because it does look fantastic when you get it in the right light, as you can see. And that white gold with that grey dial just looks perfect. It's one of the best looking watches in the whole Patek collection when you get it in the right light. But when you don't, which I haven't really shown here, it can sometimes blend into one and feel quite flat because the dial's not quite as defined as some of the other dials in the collection and not quite as contrasty in terms of contrasting the color of the actual watch itself. Tends to blend into one flat mass and makes it not so legible as well. So certain clients that we have that struggle with their eyesight skip past this model because it's very difficult to read sometimes. Overall, a great looking watch. I love the fact that this one is in white gold. It means it's much more subtle under the radar versus the rose gold variation. The steel variation is obviously really subtle under the radar as well. I think the steel version is the best one for everyday use because it features, obviously it's a steel watch. It's very, very hardy compared to the other precious metal watches. But for me, the 5712 is a little bit more of a special occasion watch. I think the 5711 is a great everyday piece. The 5712 is a really nice special occasion watch. And for me, I would say that the rose gold is the king maybe of the 5712s because I think that really comes to life, that kind of browny grey dial. The rose gold case, I think it looks absolutely stunning, that watch. The white gold is really, really beautiful. I would definitely own it. But I think the 5712 in rose gold maybe is a bit of a winner. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece, super subtle. And we have many clients that own this watch and absolutely adore it. And it's not hard to see why. It's a beautiful piece. Let us know in the comments if you love this watch. Would you buy maybe another 5712 or maybe another Nautilus in the collection, or maybe you wouldn't buy Nautilus at all? Let us know what you'd own. And as always, if you're interested in this watch or any other watch in the Patek Philippe collection, then don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are at the end of the video and also in the description. It'd be a pleasure to call this watch into stock for you. And in fact, this one is available with us now in stock. So let us know if you have any questions about this specific piece.